Okay, so in this video we're going to begin talking about fluids, right? And so that's what the rest of this unit is going to focus around, is how do fluids react when they're static, which means when they're not moving, and when they're dynamic, which means when they're moving. Okay, so this first little part is going to sound like really a review of physical science from middle school. Okay, so matter most commonly exists in 3 states, right? Or 4 states actually, because there's plasma. So you got solid, liquid, gas, or plasma. These are known as the phases of matter. Right? And so atoms in solids, right, are in close contact with forces between them that allow the atoms to vibrate but not change positions with neighboring atoms. Thus, a solid will resist all types of stress and compressions. A solid cannot be easily deformed, right, because the atoms that make up a solid are not able to move about freely. Now, in contrast to solids, liquids deform very easily when stressed, and do not spring back to their original shape once the force is removed, because they're free to slide about, right? And now that is, they flow, right? So they're allowed to move on their own with really no resistance to that. Now, when a liquid is in a container, the molecules assume the shape of the container and resist compression much like solids do. Now, atoms in gases and charged particles in plasmas, and that's what really separates a plasma from a gas. So think about plasma, superheated gases where electrons start getting stripped off, which then charges them. And hence the reason why like neon lights are plasma. Okay, the forces between the particles are therefore very weak, except for when they collide with one another. All right, and so these are the more technical ways, or the differences between the states of matter. And so what happens is, much like liquids, right, gases will flow. Oh, I misspelled flow. Right, if it's not placed in a container. So if it is placed in an open container, gases will escape, right? So there's your difference really between gases and liquids, right? Even though they both can flow, that they will escape unless you put a lid on the container, right? So it says if placed in an open container. Now, if it's placed in a closed container, they're not going to escape. Now, another contrast to liquids is that gases are easily compressed. Okay, and so what really happens is, when describing how substances flow, we shall generally refer to both gases and liquids simply as fluids, right? And make a distinction between them only when they behave differently. And so liquids, if you want to think about it this way, liquids are incompressible fluids. So if you get a problem that talks about you have an incompressible fluid, well, it's a liquid. Okay, and then if you have, the question says a compressible fluid, well, guess what? It's a gas. Okay, so again, this is just a little bit of review from stuff from chemistry, from middle school science, just talking about the states of matter. And so in physics, we really just lump liquids and gases together, and we just distinguish them in terms of their compressibility. If it's incompressible, it's a fluid, or excuse me, it's a liquid. If it's compressible, then it is a gas. In the next one, again, it's going to be more review when we're going to look at density.